The crystal chandelier caught the light just right as another woman walked away from his table, tears streaming down her perfect face. Jackson Kim didn't even glance up from his whiskey. That made 99. 99 women his family had paraded before him like merchandise, and 99 times he'd said the same cold word, no. The Eclipse Club in Manhattan pulsed with bass so deep you could feel it in your chest, red lights cutting through the smoke like blood in water. His men lined the VIP section, stone-faced, while below, the crowd danced, oblivious to the empire sitting above them. "Boss, your father called again," his right-hand man, David, leaned in close, voice barely audible over the music. Jackson's jaw tightened. Of course he did. The old man never stopped pushing, never stopped trying to control every piece of Jackson's life, like he controlled the streets of New York. But this was the one thing Jackson wouldn't let him have. He'd built this empire with blood and bullets, not by playing house with some spoiled heiress who saw him as a trophy. "Tell him I'm busy," Jackson said, his Korean accent slipping through despite years in America. David hesitated, and that hesitation told Jackson everything. His father wasn't just calling anymore. He was threatening. Another woman approached, this one in a dress that probably cost more than most people's rent, her smile practiced in plastic. Before she could speak, Jackson held up one hand. "No." She froze mid-step, confusion flickering across her face before it twisted into indignation. "You haven't even," I said no. "Leave." The words cut through the air like a blade. She opened her mouth to argue, saw the look in his eyes, and thought better of it. Smart girl. As she retreated, heels clicking in angry staccato, Jackson caught movement at the edge of his vision. A waitress, weaving through the crowd with a tray balanced perfectly on one hand, her dark skin glowing under the club lights, her natural hair pulled back in a way that looked effortless but probably wasn't. She wasn't trying to impress anyone, wasn't performing for the crowd, just working, just surviving. And something about that made him actually look up. She moved like water through the chaos, graceful without trying, and when some drunk idiot stumbled into her path, she sidestepped him without spilling a single drink. Professional, focused, completely unaware that the most dangerous man in the room was watching her every move. "Who's that?" Jackson asked, and even David seemed surprised by the question. "Who's who, boss?" "The waitress. Black girl, section 3. David followed his gaze, squinted. I don't know her name. She's new, I think. Started maybe 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks and Jackson had never noticed her. But now he couldn't look away. She delivered drinks to a table of Wall Street types who barely acknowledged her existence, their eyes sliding past her like she was invisible. One of them said something that made his buddies laugh, and Jackson saw her jaw tighten for just a fraction of a second before she smiled, nodded, and walked away with their empty glasses. Professional to the core, even when they didn't deserve it. That was the moment Jackson Kim, who had rejected 99 women without a second thought, made a decision that would change everything. "Bring her to me," he said quietly. David's eyes went wide. "Boss, she's just a..." Did I stutter? The temperature in the VIP section dropped 10 degrees. David knew that tone. Everyone knew that tone. It was the voice Jackson used right before someone disappeared. "Right away, boss." As David descended the stairs towards section 3, Jackson leaned back in his chair, eyes tracking the waitress as she moved through the crowd. She had no idea what was coming. No idea that in about 30 seconds, her entire life was about to shift on its axis. And honestly, neither did he. But something in his chest had stirred when he saw her. Something he thought had died years ago when his world became nothing but power plays and blood debts. He watched David approach her, saw her expression shift from confusion to concern as she glanced up toward the VIP section, toward him. Their eyes met across the distance, and for just a moment, the entire club seemed to go silent. Then she looked away, shook her head at whatever David was saying, and tried to walk past him. Tried. David gently caught her arm, said something else, and this time her eyes snapped back up to Jackson with something that looked a lot like defiance. Oh, this was going to be interesting. Because Jackson Kim had just found the one woman in New York who wasn't interested in meeting him. And that made her the most interesting woman he'd ever seen. Her name was Delilah Monroe, and she had exactly 3 rules for surviving New York. Keep your head down, don't trust men in expensive suits, and never, ever go near the VIP section. Right now, she was about to break rule number 3, and the man in the expensive suit was making it very clear she didn't have a choice. "Miss, the boss just wants to talk," David said, his grip on her arm gentle but firm, the kind of touch that said he could be a lot less gentle if he needed to be. Delilah looked up at the VIP section again, at the man who'd been staring at her like she was the only person in the room, and every instinct in her body screamed run. She'd seen men like him before, powerful men who thought the world was theirs for the taking, who looked at women like her and saw something to own, something to use and discard. "I'm working," she said, keeping her voice steady even though her heart was hammering. "Tell your boss I'm flattered, but I'm not interested." David's expression shifted, something like respect flickering in his eyes before it disappeared behind professional neutrality. He doesn't take no for an answer. Then he needs to learn. Delilah shot back, and she saw something flash across David's face that might have been amusement or might have been concern. She couldn't tell which. But before she could pull away, another voice cut through the music, cold and sharp as winter wind. "Let her go." They both turned. Jackson Kim had left his throne, was descending the stairs with the kind of presence that made people instinctively step back, creating a path through the crowd without him having to say a word. He moved like a predator, all controlled power and dangerous grace, and when he stopped in front of Delilah, the world seemed to narrow down to just the 2 of them. Up close, he was even more intimidating, tall and broad-shouldered, his black suit tailored perfectly to a body that clearly knew how to handle itself in a fight, his dark eyes sharp and assessing as they met hers. There was a scar along his jawline, faint but visible, and it somehow made him look more dangerous, not less. "You're not interested," he said, and it wasn't a question. His accent was stronger now, the Korean inflection wrapping around the English words in a way that shouldn't have been attractive, but absolutely was. Delilah lifted her chin, refusing to be intimidated even though everything about him screamed danger. "No, I'm not." Silence. The kind of silence that made everyone around them stop and stare, waiting to see what would happen when someone told Jackson Kim no to his face. Then he smiled, and it was nothing like the cold, dismissive expressions he'd been wearing all night. This smile was real, surprised, almost boyish, and it completely transformed his face. "You have no idea who I am, do you?" "Should I?" Delilah asked, and she heard David make a sound that might have been a choked laugh or a prayer. She couldn't tell which. Jackson's smile widened. No, you shouldn't." He glanced at the tray still balanced in her hand, at the empty glasses she'd collected. "You're good at this. Waiting tables." "I have to be," Delilah said flatly. "Some of us work for a living." Another silence, but this one felt different, charged with something she couldn't name. Jackson looked at her like he was seeing her for the first time, really seeing her, not just looking. "What time do you get off?" "Why?" "Because I want to take you to dinner." The audacity of it stole her breath for a second. This man, whoever he was, thought he could just snap his fingers and she'd drop everything. Thought her time, her life, her choices were his to command. Just like every other powerful man she'd ever encountered. "I don't date customers," Delilah said, her voice ice. "I'm not a customer. I own this place." Oh no. Delilah felt the ground shift beneath her feet as the pieces clicked into place. The VIP section, the men in suits, the way everyone had been watching him all night. The Eclipse Club was one of the most exclusive venues in Manhattan, and she'd just told the owner to learn to take no for an answer. She was so fired. But instead of fear, she felt anger rising in her chest, hot and righteous. "Then you should know better," she said, meeting his eyes without flinching. "Your employees aren't your personal dating pool. That's called harassment." For a long moment, Jackson just stared at her, and Delilah braced herself for the explosion, for the "you're fired" that would leave her scrambling to pay rent. But it never came. Instead, he laughed, a real, genuine laugh that made heads turn all across the club. "You're right," he said, and he sounded almost delighted. "You're absolutely right." He pulled a card from his pocket, held it out to her. "This is my personal number, not my business line. When you get off work, if you want to have dinner with me as two people, not as boss and employee, call. If you don't, I'll understand." Delilah looked at the card, at him, trying to figure out the angle, the game he was playing. But his expression was open, honest in a way that seemed impossible for someone who clearly lived in shadows. "And if I don't call, then you don't call," Jackson said simply. "You'll keep your job, you'll keep working here, and I'll never mention this again. I promise." The card was heavy in her fingers, expensive paper with simple black text. Just a name and a number, nothing else. No title, no company, just Jackson Kim. "One dinner," he said softly, and there was something in his voice that made her look up, something vulnerable beneath all that power. "Just give me one chance to show you I'm not what you think I am." Delilah should have said no, should have handed the card back, finished her shift, and forgotten this ever happened. But there was something in his eyes, something that looked almost like loneliness, like he was just as surprised by this moment as she was. "I'll think about it," she heard herself say, and she tucked the card into her apron before she could change her mind. Jackson's smile could have lit up the entire city. "That's all I'm asking." He stepped back, giving her space, and just like that the spell was broken. The club rushed back in, all noise and lights and movement. David was watching them both with an expression that suggested he'd just witnessed something impossible. "Enjoy your night," Jackson said, and then he was gone, disappearing back into the VIP section like he'd never left. Delilah stood there for a long moment, the card burning a hole in her apron, her heart still racing. What just happened? "Girl, did Jackson Kim just ask you out?" Her co-worker, Maya, appeared at her elbow, eyes wide as dinner plates. "Who?" "Jackson Kim. Only the most dangerous man in New York. He runs half the underground in this city, and the other half is too scared to admit he runs them too." Oh no. This was so much worse than she thought. Delilah's apartment in Brooklyn was exactly what you'd expect for someone working 3 jobs to stay afloat, small, cramped, with a radiator that clanked like it was trying to escape and a view of the brick wall across the alley. But it was hers, paid for with her own money, her own sweat, and right now she was sitting on her second-hand couch staring at a business card like it might explode. Maya had spent the rest of the shift filling her in on Jackson Kim, and every detail made Delilah's stomach sink further. Korean Mafia, connections that ran from Manhattan to Seoul, a reputation for being ruthless in business and absolutely lethal to his enemies. The kind of man mothers warned their daughters about, the kind who smiled while he destroyed lives. And he wanted to take her to dinner. "You're insane if you go," Delilah told herself, but her fingers traced the embossed letters of his name anyway. "You're insane if you even think about it." Her phone buzzed. Rent reminder, due in 3 days, and she was still 200 short. The Eclipse job helped, but it wasn't enough. Nothing was ever enough in this city that ate people alive and spit out their bones. She thought about her mother back in California, sick and getting sicker, medical bills piling up faster than Delilah could pay them. Thought about the eviction notice she'd gotten last month, the one she'd barely managed to fight off. Thought about how tired she was, how exhausted from fighting every single day just to exist. And then she thought about the way Jackson had looked at her, not like she was invisible, not like she was something to use, but like she was someone who mattered, like she was someone worth knowing. It was probably an act, probably a game. Men like him didn't actually care about women like her. They just wanted the thrill of the chase, the conquest. But what if it wasn't? What if, just this once, something good could happen? "One dinner," Delilah whispered. "Just one, and then you walk away." She picked up her phone before she could change her mind, dialed the number on the card. It rang once, twice. "I was hoping you'd call." Jackson's voice was different on the phone, warmer, less guarded. "I wasn't sure I would," Delilah admitted. "What changed your mind?" "Honesty." He'd given her honesty, so maybe she could give it back. "I'm curious." And terrified. mostly terrified. Good, Jackson said, and she could hear the smile in his voice. Fear means you're smart. Tomorrow night, 7 o'clock. I'll send a car. No, Delilah said firmly. I'll meet you there. Tell me where, and I'll come on my own. A pause, then a soft laugh. You don't trust me. I don't know you. Fair enough. He gave her an address in Manhattan, a restaurant she'd never heard of, but that probably cost more per meal than she made in a week. Delilah? Yes. Thank you for giving me a chance. The sincerity in his voice nearly broke her resolve. She hung up before she could say something stupid, like that she was already regretting this, or that his voice made her feel things she had no business feeling. Sleep didn't come easy that night. When it finally did, she dreamed of dark eyes and dangerous smiles, and woke up more confused than ever. The next day crawled by. Delilah worked her morning shift at the diner, her afternoon shift at the bookstore, and by the time 6 o'clock rolled around, she was exhausted and second-guessing everything. But she'd said yes. So she went home, showered, and stood in front of her closet trying to figure out what you wore to dinner with the Mafia boss. Not that she had many options. Eventually, she settled on a simple black dress, the one she'd bought for job interviews, and a pair of heels that made her feet hurt but made her legs look amazing. Her natural hair was pulled back in a sleek bun, her makeup minimal but polished. When she looked in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. The subway ride to Manhattan felt like traveling to another world. Brooklyn to Midtown, poverty to privilege, and with every stop Delilah's doubt grew stronger. She could still turn back, could still text him and say she'd made a mistake. But then the train pulled into her stop, and she was stepping onto the platform, and it was too late to run. The restaurant was exactly as intimidating as she'd feared, all marble and gold leaf, with a doorman who looked at her like he was trying to figure out if she'd stolen her dress. Reservation under Kim, Delilah said, lifting her chin. The doorman's expression transformed instantly. Of course. Right this way, Mississippi. He led her through the restaurant, past tables full of people who looked like they'd been born wealthy, to a private room in the back. And there was Jackson, standing when she entered, wearing a suit that probably cost more than her rent, looking at her like she was the only woman in the world. You came, he said softly. I almost didn't, Delilah admitted. I'm glad you did. He pulled out her chair, and she sat, hyper-aware of his proximity, of the way he moved with that same dangerous grace she'd noticed at the club. When he sat across from her, the table felt both too large and too small at the same time. I ordered wine, Jackson said, gesturing to the bottle. But if you don't drink, I drink, Delilah said, and she definitely needed it right now. He poured for both of them, his movements precise and controlled. So, one dinner, she agreed. Tell me about yourself, Delilah Monroe. The way he said her name, with that accent wrapping around the syllables, did things to her pulse she refused to acknowledge. What do you want to know? Everything, Jackson said simply. Start with why you're in New York. So she told him. About leaving California to escape a life that felt too small, about her mother's illness, about working 3 jobs and barely staying afloat, about dreams she'd had once, of being a teacher, of making a difference, dreams that had slowly been ground down by the reality of survival. Jackson listened without interrupting, his dark eyes never leaving her face, and it felt like being seen in a way she'd never experienced before. Like every word mattered. Like she mattered. Your turn, Delilah said when she finished. Tell me about you. What do you want to know? The truth, she said. Maya told me you run half of New York's underground. Is that true? She expected him to deflect, to lie, to give her some sanitized version of his life. Instead, he nodded. Yes, my father built this empire, and I inherited it, along with all the blood and violence that comes with it. You could walk away, Delilah suggested. Jackson's laugh was bitter. No, I couldn't. You don't walk away from this world. You either rule it or it destroys you. So you chose to rule. I chose to survive, he corrected. There's a difference. Their food arrived, course after course of things Delilah had never tasted, prepared by chefs whose names she'd probably never pronounced correctly. But she barely noticed any of it, too focused on the man across from her. On the way, he opened up piece by piece, showing her scars she couldn't see but could hear in his voice. He told her about growing up between two worlds, Korean and American, never quite fitting in either. About his father's expectations, his mother's disappointment. About building something of his own in the shadows, carving out power inch by bloody inch. Why me? Delilah finally asked. Why? Out of all those women, did you notice me? Jackson was quiet for a long moment, turning his wine glass in his hands. Because you looked at me and saw a man, not an empire. Because you said no when everyone else always says yes. Because, he met her eyes. Because when I'm around you, I remember what it feels like to be human. The words hung in the air between them, honest and raw and terrifying. Delilah should have left, should have thanked him for dinner, and walked away before this became something she couldn't control. But instead, she reached across the table and took his hand. His fingers closed around hers, warm and strong, and something clicked into place, something that felt like destiny or disaster. She couldn't tell which. One more dinner, she heard herself say. Jackson's smile was beautiful and devastating. One more, he agreed. But they both knew it was already too late. This wasn't going to be just dinners. This was going to be everything. 3 weeks. That's how long it took for Delilah's carefully constructed walls to come crashing down. 3 weeks of dinners that turned into late-night walks through Manhattan, of conversations that stretched until dawn, of Jackson showing up at the diner during her morning shifts just to see her smile. 3 weeks of falling for a man she absolutely should not be falling for. You're glowing, Maya said, watching Delilah practically float through her shift at the eclipse. It's disgusting and adorable, and I'm so jealous. Delilah couldn't even deny it. Every time her phone buzzed with a text from Jackson, her heart did this stupid fluttery thing that made her feel like a teenager. Every time she saw him, it got harder to remember why this was a bad idea. He's different than I thought, Delilah admitted, restocking glasses behind the bar. Like, scary different? Like human different, Delilah said. He volunteers at a youth center in his old neighborhood. Did you know that? Teaches kids taekwondo, helps them stay off the streets. He visits his mom every Sunday, brings her flowers. He's careful, Maya warned. Men like Jackson Kim don't just fall in love. They consume. They possess. Make sure you know what you're getting into. But it was already too late for warnings. Delilah was in so deep she couldn't see the surface anymore. That night, after her shift, Jackson picked her up in his car, a sleek black Mercedes that probably cost more than she'd make in 10 years. Where are we going? She asked, sliding into the passenger seat. Somewhere special, Jackson said, and there was something in his voice that made her pulse quicken. They drove north, out of the city, until the lights of Manhattan were just aglow on the horizon. When they finally stopped, they were at a house overlooking the water, modern and beautiful, all glass and clean lines. What is this place? Delilah asked as Jackson led her inside. Mine, he said. I bought it a few years ago. Somewhere to escape when the city gets too loud. The interior was stunning, minimalist, and elegant, with floor-to-ceiling windows that showed the water reflecting moonlight. But what caught Delilah's attention was the grand piano in the corner, clearly well-loved and frequently played. You play? She asked, moving toward it. Jackson nodded, looking almost embarrassed. My mother insisted. Said that even if I lived in darkness, I should know how to create something beautiful. Play for me, Delilah said softly. For a moment she thought he'd refuse, but then he sat at the piano, his fingers finding the keys with practiced ease. The music that filled the room was hauntingly beautiful, melancholy and hopeful at the same time, and Delilah felt tears prick her eyes. This man, this dangerous, powerful man, played like he was sharing his soul. When the last note faded, Delilah moved to stand beside him. That was beautiful. It's called Spring Day, Jackson said quietly. My mother used to sing it to me. Without thinking, Delilah reached out and touched his face, traced the scar along his jaw. Where did you get this? A reminder, Jackson said, catching her hand, pressing it against his cheek. Of what happens when you trust the wrong people. Do you trust me? The question hung between them, heavy with implication. Jackson stood, still holding her hand, and the space between them felt electric. I'm trying to, he admitted. I want to. But trust isn't something I'm good at, Delilah. I've been betrayed too many times, hurt too many times. Everyone wants something from me. Everyone has an angle. Except you. I don't want anything from you, Delilah whispered. I know, Jackson said, and his free hand came up to cup her face, his thumb brushing her cheek with heartbreaking gentleness. That's why this terrifies me. Because you could destroy me, and I'd let you. Then he was kissing her, soft at first, almost hesitant, like he was afraid she'd pull away. But Delilah leaned into it, her arms wrapping around his neck, and the kiss deepened, becoming something urgent and desperate and inevitable. They broke apart breathless, foreheads pressed together, and Delilah could feel his heart racing as fast as hers. Stay with me tonight, Jackson whispered. Just stay? We don't have to. I just want you here. So she stayed. They lay on his couch watching the moonlight on the water, her head on his chest, his fingers running through her hair, and talked about everything and nothing. About dreams and fears, and all the what-ifs that kept them awake at night. My father wants me to marry, Jackson said eventually. Some daughter from another crime family, strengthen alliances, expand the empire. He's been pushing for years. The 99 women, Delilah realized. Yes, I rejected them all. Not because they weren't beautiful or accomplished, but because they wanted the empire, not me. They saw dollar signs and power, not a person. And me? Delilah asked. What do you see when you look at me? Jackson shifted so he could meet her eyes. I see someone who fights every day to survive, who works 3 jobs and still smiles. Someone who stood up to me when she thought I was just some rich asshole. Someone who makes me believe that maybe, just maybe, I could be more than what my father made me. You are more, Delilah said fiercely. You're so much more, Jackson. You just have to believe it. He kissed her again, slower this time, reverent, like she was something precious. And when they finally fell asleep tangled together, Delilah felt safer than she had in years. But safety is an illusion, especially in Jackson Kim's world. And the danger was already closing in. Across town, in a high-rise office that overlooked Central Park, Jackson's father sat behind a mahogany desk, studying photographs spread across the surface. Photographs of his son with a woman he'd never approved. Who is she? He asked the man standing in front of him. Delilah Monroe, sir. 26. Works 3 jobs, no criminal record. Nobody important. My son doesn't look at nobody like he's looking at her in these pictures, the old man said coldly. Find out everything. Family, friends, debts, secrets. Everyone has something they're hiding. Find hers. And then we use it, the old man said, gathering the photos. One way or another, this ends. My son will marry who I tell him to marry, and this girl will learn that some men are too dangerous to love. The trap was being set, and neither Jackson nor Delilah had any idea the storm that was coming. The first sign of trouble came on a Tuesday morning. Delilah arrived at the diner for her shift to find her manager waiting with an expression that made her stomach drop. Delilah, I'm sorry, Marcus said, and he actually looked sorry. I have to let you go. What? Why? I've never been late, never missed a shift. It's not performance. Marcus interrupted. Someone bought the building. New owners are cleaning house, and they specifically asked for you to be let go. The words didn't make sense. Specifically, I fought it, Marcus said. But they're the owners now, and I don't have a choice. Here's your last paycheck plus severance. I'm sorry. Delilah stood there, stunned, as he pressed an envelope into her hand. This was impossible. She needed this job. Without it, she couldn't make rent, couldn't help her mom, couldn't survive. She called Jackson from the street, her hands shaking. Someone bought the diner and fired me. Just me. Jackson, what's happening? His silence told her everything. I'll find out, he said finally, his voice deadly calm. Stay where you are. I'm sending David to pick you up. No, Delilah said. I can handle this myself. Delilah, I said no. I'm not some damsel who needs rescuing. I'll figure it out. She hung up before he could argue. But her resolve lasted about 30 seconds before reality crashed in. Without the diner job, she was short $400 on rent. The bookstore and the eclipse weren't enough. She was about to lose everything. Her phone rang again. Unknown number. Hello. Miss Monroe, a smooth, accented voice said. My name is James Kim. I believe you're seeing my son, Jackson's father. Delilah's blood ran cold. I don't know what you. Don't insult either of us by lying. James interrupted. I know everything about you. Your mother's medical bills, your debt, your 3 jobs. Well, 2 jobs now. The diner was unfortunate, but necessary. You got me fired? I removed an obstacle, James corrected. Miss Monroe, let me be clear. My son has responsibilities, obligations that go far beyond his personal desires. He's supposed to marry the daughter of our largest business associate. This arrangement has been in place for years. You are interfering with plans much larger than yourself. Maybe you should let Jackson make his own choices, Delilah shot back. He's a grown man. He's the heir to an empire, James said coldly. And you? You're nobody. A distraction. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to walk away from my son, disappear from his life. In return, I'll pay off your mother's medical bills, clear your debts, and give you enough money to start fresh somewhere far from New York. The offer was staggering, life-changing, everything she needed. All she had to do was give up Jackson. And if I refuse? Delilah asked. Then I'll make your life very difficult, James said pleasantly. The diner was just the beginning. I can make sure you never work in this city again. I can make your mother's medical care vanish. I can destroy every single thing you care about. Or you can take the money, help your family, and let my son fulfill his destiny. Your choice, Miss Monroe. You have 24 hours to decide. The line went dead. Delilah stood there, shaking with rage and fear. This was what Jackson had tried to warn her about. This was the reality of his world. People didn't get happy endings. They got used as pawns. Her phone buzzed with a text from Jackson. Where are you? We need to talk. She should go to him. Should tell him everything. But the words of his father echoed in her head. She was nobody. A distraction. What if James was right? What if loving Jackson meant destroying him? Instead of answering, Delilah went to the one place she could think clearly, the Brooklyn Bridge. She stood in the middle, watching the water below, trying to figure out what to do. Thought I'd find you here. Delilah spun. Jackson stood a few feet away, hands in his pockets, hair disheveled like he'd been running his fingers through it. David's good at his job, Jackson explained. I asked him to follow you. Make sure you were safe. Don't be mad at him. Your father called me, Delilah said. Offered me money to leave you. She watched his expression shudder, watched him become the cold, dangerous man she'd first seen at the eclipse. What did you say? I'm still here, aren't I? For now, Jackson said quietly. But he got to you. I can see it in your eyes. You're thinking about taking his offer. He said he'd destroy me, Delilah admitted. That he'd make sure I lost everything. And he can do it, can't he? He already got me fired. What's next? Jackson moved closer, took her hands. I'll protect you. Can you? Delilah asked. Can you really? Because he's your father, Jackson, and he controls your entire world. How long before you have to choose between me and your empire? There's no choice, Jackson said fiercely. I choose you. Every time, I choose you. Even if it destroys everything you've built. I don't care. Yes, you do, Delilah said, tears streaming down her face. You care about your people, your business, your responsibilities. And I can't be the reason you lose all of that. I won't be. So what are you saying? Jackson's voice was raw. That you're giving up? That one threat from my father is enough to scare you off. I'm saying maybe he's right, Delilah whispered. Maybe I'm nobody, and you're meant for something bigger. Jackson's hands tightened on hers. You're not nobody. You're everything. And if you walk away now, if you let him win, then we've already lost. What do you want me to do? Delilah asked desperately. Fight him. Go to war with your own father. Yes, Jackson said simply. If that's what it takes. I'll burn my entire empire to the ground before I let him take you from me. The declaration should have been romantic, should have swept her off her feet. But all Delilah could think about was the cost. How many people would suffer if Jackson went to war with his father? How much blood would be spilled? I need time, she said. Time to think. How much time? I don't know. Just give me space, Jackson. Please. She pulled her hands free, stepped back, and watched something break in his eyes. You're going to take his offer, aren't you? Jackson asked. I don't know, Delilah admitted. But I need to figure this out on my own. She walked away, left him standing on the bridge, and it felt like leaving a piece of herself behind. Her phone buzzed one more time. Jackson, I'm not giving up on us. Whatever you decide, I'm not giving up. Delilah turned off her phone and went home to cry. Delilah didn't sleep that night. She sat on her couch, James Kim's offer playing on repeat in her head. Life-changing money. Her mother's medical bills gone. A fresh start. All she had to do was walk away from the only man who'd ever made her feel like she mattered. By morning, she'd made a decision. She showed up at James Kim's office building, gave her name to security, and rode the elevator to the penthouse with her heart in her throat. James was waiting, seated behind a desk that probably cost more than her car, looking every inch the emperor of his criminal domain. Miss Monroe, he said, gesturing to a chair. I'm impressed. Most people take the full 24 hours. I'm not here to take your offer, Delilah said, and watched his expression harden. I'm here to tell you that if you come after me again, if you threaten me or hurt anyone I care about, I will make it my life's mission to destroy you. James laughed, actually laughed. And how exactly would you do that? By telling your son everything, Delilah said calmly. Every threat, every manipulation, every way you've tried to control his life. He loves you, but that love has limits. Push him too far, and you won't just lose a son. You'll lose your empire. Bold words from someone with so much to lose, James said. You think I'm afraid of losing? Delilah leaned forward. I've been poor my entire life. I've worked 3 jobs, survived on nothing, watched people I love suffer. You can't threaten me with poverty, Mr. Kim. I've lived it. But you? You've built everything on control, on power, on making people fear you. What happens when your own son stops fearing you and starts hating you instead? For the first time, James looked uncertain. He would, Delilah interrupted. For me, he would. Because that's what love does. It makes you brave, makes you willing to sacrifice everything. And your son loves me. So here's my counteroffer. You leave us alone. You let Jackson make his own choices, and I won't tell him that you tried to bribe me to leave. We'll pretend this conversation never happened. And if I refuse, then we go to war, Delilah said simply. And trust me, Mr. Kim, you'll lose. They stared at each other across the desk, 2 people from completely different worlds, locked in a battle of wills. Finally, James smiled, and it was almost respectful. You're stronger than I thought, he admitted. Maybe you're not so wrong for my son after all. Does that mean? It means I'll think about it, James said. But understand this, Miss Monroe. If you hurt my son, if you break his heart or betray his trust, what I threatened before will seem like mercy compared to what I'll do to you. I would never hurt him, Delilah said. Good. Then we understand each other. Now get out of my office. Delilah laughed, her legs shaking but her head held high. She'd faced down a Mafia boss and won. Or at least survived. Now she just had to find Jackson and hope he'd forgive her for doubting them. She found him at the Eclipse, sitting in the same VIP section where this had all started, staring at an empty stage. I heard you went to see my father, he said without looking at her. David's really good at his job, Delilah said, echoing his words from the bridge. What did he offer you? Everything. Money, security, a way out. Jackson finally looked at her, and his eyes were haunted. And you came here to say goodbye. No, Delilah said, moving closer. I came here to say I'm sorry. Sorry for doubting us, for being scared, for almost letting him win. You didn't take the money, Jackson said slowly, like he couldn't quite believe it. I don't want his money, Delilah said, reaching him now, standing close enough to touch. I want you. Just you. Even if it means dealing with your terrifying father and your criminal empire and all the complications that come with loving you. I choose you, Jackson Kim. Every time, I choose you. His hands came up to frame her face, his touch reverent and desperate. You're sure? Because once you're in, you're in. There's no walking away from this world. I'm sure, Delilah whispered. I've never been more sure of anything. Jackson kissed her like he'd been dying without her, like she was oxygen and he'd been drowning. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, he pressed his forehead to hers. I'm going to marry you, he said. Someday, when you're ready, I'm going to put a ring on your finger and make you mine in every way that matters. Is that a threat or a promise? Delilah asked, smiling through tears. Both, Jackson said, and then he was lifting her up, spinning her around while she laughed, the sound echoing through the empty club. Below them, David cleared his throat. Boss, your father's on line 1. Jackson's expression darkened, but Delilah touched his face, brought his attention back to her. It's okay. We'll face him together. Together. The word felt like a vow, like a promise of something bigger than both of them. Jackson took the call, put it on speaker. Father, I met your girl, James said, and there was something almost like approval in his voice. She's got steel in her spine. I can see why you chose her over the others. I'm not marrying some alliance bride, Jackson said firmly. I'm marrying Delilah. If you can't accept that, then I accept it, James interrupted, and both Jackson and Delilah froze. What? I said I accept it. She threatened me, stood up to me, protected you even when it put her at risk. That's the kind of woman worthy of the Kim name. That's the kind of woman who can stand beside you and not behind you. Jackson looked at Delilah with wonder. What did you say to him? Just the truth, Delilah said, blushing. That I love you, and I'm not going anywhere. The wedding will be at the cathedral, James continued, like he hadn't just completely reversed course. We'll invite all the families, show them that the Kim heir has chosen strength over politics. And Miss Monroe? Yes, Mr. Kim? Delilah asked. Welcome to the family. Try not to make me regret this. The line went dead. Jackson stared at the phone, then at Delilah, then started laughing, the sound shocked and delighted. You did it. You actually got my father to back down. How? I told him the truth, Delilah said, wrapping her arms around his neck. That you love me enough to walk away from everything. That I love you enough to fight for us. That we're stronger together than any empire. You're incredible, Jackson breathed. Absolutely incredible. So, Delilah said, grinning. About that marriage proposal. Too soon. Way too soon, Delilah agreed. Ask me again in a year. Deal, Jackson said, pulling her close. But I'm warning you now, I'm going to spoil you. No more 3 jobs, no more struggling. I'm taking care of you. I can take care of myself, Delilah protested. I know you can, Jackson said. But let me help anyway. Let me be your partner in every way. Delilah looked up at this man, this dangerous, powerful, gentle man who'd rejected 99 women and claimed her as his, and felt her heart swell. Okay, she whispered. Partner. They sealed it with a kiss. There in the club where it all began, and somewhere in the city lights and shadows, their future was already being written. A future of love and danger, of power and partnership, of 2 people from different worlds who chose each other anyway. 6 months later, Delilah stood in front of a mirror in a wedding dress that made her look like a queen, her mother healthy and beaming beside her thanks to the medical care Jackson had quietly arranged. You ready for this? Her mother asked. Delilah looked at her reflection, at the woman who'd fought her way through poverty and pain to find something real, something worth keeping. More than ready, she said. The cathedral was packed with New York's most dangerous people, crime families and business moguls and politicians who owed Jackson favors. But Delilah only had eyes for one person. Jackson stood at the altar in a perfect black suit, and when their eyes met, his smile was blinding. As she walked down the aisle, Delilah thought about the night they'd met, about her saying no, about him pursuing her anyway, about falling in love despite every reason not to, about choosing each other over everything. Hi, Jackson whispered when she reached him. Hi yourself, Delilah whispered back. The ceremony was beautiful, traditional Korean and American elements woven together, and when the officiant said, "You may kiss the bride," Jackson did, long and deep and full of promise. Mine, he murmured against her lips. Yours, Delilah agreed. Always yours. And as they walked back down the aisle as husband and wife, surrounded by people who'd kill and die for them, Delilah knew that this was just the beginning. Their story wasn't over. It was just getting started. But that's a tale for another time. For now, it was enough to know that the Korean Mafia boss who'd rejected 99 women had found his perfect match in a Brooklyn waitress with a spine of steel and a heart of gold. And they lived dangerously ever after. If you enjoyed this story of Jackson and Delilah's love against all odds, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more addictive romance stories. Drop a comment below and tell me what you thought. Should we do a sequel? Let me know. And remember, true love is worth fighting for, no matter what world you come from. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.